We're ready. Okay, well, we'll get the meeting to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, are there any disclosures of interest on the board? Seeing none, we will review and approve the previous board meeting minutes.
Move approval as presented. Anderson.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Review and approve the county board agenda.
I would approve it, but I would like to pull item, which one is it? 4? 4 off the consent agenda and put it after we do the land use management director's report.
Okay, any other changes? Mr. Arneson? Okay. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and approve the following items on the consent agenda, minus number 4.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are at the Land Use Management Director's Report. Sam.
Good morning. So this is a conditional use permit request from Gavin Hokinson, who owns the Bell Creek Roller Rink in Bell Creek Township. He's asking for a permit to do a rural tourism operation to host weddings and events in the existing Bell Creek Roller Rink building in conformance with the county's rural tourism standards. The applicant intends to use the parcel across 352nd Street for additional parking space. The roller rink and the property across the street are all zoned business district, and that property across the street is currently used for row crop agriculture and is owned by his father. The applicant has proposed to use the building for weddings and events during summer, and then during the winter, it would still be used for roller skating activities. Hours of operation for the events would only be Saturdays, May to September until midnight. Smaller events like rehearsal dinners may take place on Fridays. Those must also end at midnight. Let's see, approximately 1 acre of the 2.5 acre parcel across 352nd would be used for parking, leaving the rest of it as grass and leaving room for a future septic system. His current system is not compliant with his proposed use, so he has elected to temporarily use holding tanks, but he needed room to construct a future septic system. The only space really available was this area across the street.
Can I just ask a question about that? So he would have to get permission to go under the street
Yes,
with septic lines?
yes, from
Okay.
the township.
And that's to the north?
Yes, to the north.
Okay, got it.
So staff, we did reach out to the County Public Works Department for comments on the proposal. Assistant Engineer Jake Rezak emailed staffs and said that if there's no parking on CSAH 8, no impact to normal traffic patterns, and the plan is to keep people walking off of the road, County 8, which they wouldn't necessarily prohibit, but could result in safety issues. He had no concerns. The Planning Commission did include a condition to address parking across 352nd, including ensuring the crossing is properly lit, directing all foot traffic to use the grassy area north of the existing building, and ensure no one is walking on County 8. Let's see. The current parcel is unable to comply with some of the provisions of the Rural Tourism Ordinance, so the Board of Adjustment did approve variances to those items at their May meeting. Those were having facilities with greater than 50 guest capacity must be at least 500 feet from neighboring dwellings. The existing roller rink building is about 150 feet from the dwelling on the across County 8 Boulevard. That dwelling is currently vacant and is also owned by the applicant's father, and it is also zoned business. And then facilities are also required if they have more than 50 guest capacity to be located on a parcel at least 3 acres in size, and the applicant's parcel is 1.21 acres. So as I mentioned, the Board of Adjustment approved variances to those items. The Planning Commission held their public hearing and has recommended the county board adopt staff report into the record, adopt findings of fact, accept application, testimony, exhibits, and other evidence presented into the record, and approve the request from Bell Creek Properties and Gavin Hokinson for a conditional use permit to operate a rural tourism facility for weddings and events in the existing Bell Creek roller rink building with maximum occupancy of 300 guests, subject to 9 conditions. I'll stop there. Is there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I just got a couple. Knowing that property extremely well, having attended a wedding there a long time ago when they used to have them there, having roller skated there, I understand it. I do have a question about the parking. The parking across the front of that building that is currently being used, you back out into the lane of traffic to start. When you park there, you're parking against the building and you back out in the lane of traffic. Is that something that we would continue to allow when the use changes, or do we need to address that?
Whenever the use of a property changes, we reserve the right to take a look at access points, and we should. So this would be a good time to take a look at that and discuss with them how they plan to handle traffic backing out onto County Road 8. So far, we haven't had any issues there.
It's a low-volume road, and I
It
get
is.
that. But I also, if we're applying it one place where we say you can't back out into the lane of traffic, do we need to apply that same to this?
We should to come into conformance with our access policy.
And then I think in there it said there would be no parking along County 8?
Yes.
So is there no parking signs, or would they have to be put up on the opposite side from the roller rink, from Bell Creek store?
Typically for events where we require no parking, the event holder is responsible for putting the signage up.
And then the reason I pulled the setup deal is a little bit tied to this, because I take it they're asking for the setups to be able to do it at the wedding event center, which I'm fine with. I don't have any problem with that. It's just that there's not any regulation, from my understanding, about hours they can serve. Does the way this is written in any way restrict from them having that open any day of the week to do the setups?
Well, so they're restricted to having events Fridays and Saturdays, but I wouldn't say they're restricted from having, because they still have the roller rink there, so people come in and do
Could be any day of
setups.
the week.
It could be any day of the week.
Correct.
These weddings are only Fridays, Saturdays until midnight.
So and that's why I pulled it, to have it talked about after we take action on this. And I'm not opposed to this at all. I think it's fine as long as we can meet some of those safety issues that I'd have concern with the parking. But I don't know if we approve it, and we could put conditions around the setup licensing. Do we have to come back through a hearing to add conditions to this then?
If you were going to change any of the conditions after you approve it,
Goes through the whole
it
planning
would have to
commission
go
again?
back through the whole process again. I would say zoning isn't really the ones who's enforcing the liquor license laws, so this permit is just for a zoning land use permit. It's
So we can't tie it.
enforcing, right, having the zoning administrator go out and enforce the liquor setup laws and everything. That's not
You don't want to step into
what I
that?
do. I don't know the laws. That's not, I would rather not be out at night on a Saturday.
And I agree, they probably need to be separate, but I think we as commissioners need to think about this whole picture, not just this piece and the other piece. They kind of tie together. So
Am I correct in understanding you'd be okay with the setup for the weddings and the Friday and Saturday night events, but not with setup during the roller skating?
no, I'm okay
events?
with it during the roller skating. That doesn't,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. But Scott's got a little information about that license.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, so I texted Lucas, actually I called him too, but anyways, according to Department of Public Safety, they can have setups from 8 AM to 1 AM. But yeah, obviously, other types of enforcement usually come back to the sheriff's department. But, my question, he said we can also, if we want to delay the setup permit, you could delay it and ask more questions. But my question, probably more for Steve, is, if you were going to tie anything to the operations of this land use permit, that's probably, now's the time to do that, and what type of restrictions could you do with the alcohol-related aspects of events? It's totally sprung on you, I know that. But.
Because in the insurance world, I've never insured somebody who has just the display permit or I don't know if he even addresses the alcohol. Is not responsible for it then because they're bringing their own? Is the establishment?
I'm pretty sure in statute, there's still responsibilities about you allowing people to consume or overconsume on your
business.
property. I would think there is, I don't.
That was what, I mean, the flag went up when I saw them, and they're separate and not connected. It was, yes, I want it, and I want it only during that, and that's when I'm gonna do it, and he puts that in the conditional use, that the only time I'm gonna do that is in the condition, in there. I would be 100% in favor of this.
Is this a public hearing today? No. Public hearing, we don't have to ask for.
So I don't know whether it's to postpone both till we get more answers, or to approve the wedding venue, which is fine, and then get more answers and clarity around the consumption and display permit. And I know that you can't answer that.
Yeah, I would personally, approving the wedding venue and everything, he can't have liquor there if you don't approve the consumption permit. So if that's delayed, then at least he can get going on any renovations and stuff he wants to do.
It was on, sorry. That's how bad my vision is. I thought the light was on. And then with regard to the conditional use permit, my feeling on that, just without having a chance to think through it on this issue, would be that it'd be easier to place a restriction on that than it would be on the permit. Because obviously that's what we normally do. And I'm not sure if the Commissioner, if you're concerned about consumption of alcohol past the operating hours under the conditional use permit, or what the concern is there. I think that might be a restriction that you could place on the conditional use permit. Serve alcohol past the operating hours of the conditional use permit. I'm just talking off the top of my head. I'm just thinking out loud, trying to figure out what the best course of action is that would leave open what your intention is and what your
Oh,
concerns
so
are.
we have a 12 o'clock ending on the conditional use, and in theory, we have a 1 o'clock on the,
Yes.
It would have been much easier if that was part of his application for the conditional use.
But I think, Steve, you're saying we could approve the conditional use permit with the hours of the setup being consistent with the conditional use permit?
That would be, I'm not sure, that's what something I'd have to think about and talk with
I see.
Sam about that. Haven't had a chance to think through that very well, but I think it would be, in my mind, just thinking through the different processes, it seems like that would be the easier answer as opposed to putting restrictions on the setup permit.
And that was kind of my question to Scott this morning, was are we able to put any conditions on that permit from the state? And even putting them on the conditional use is altering the conditions that the state's granting the permit under. And maybe it's mute. Maybe we should just approve both and see where it goes. But I just had to raise the question because they just don't jive to me.
I look at, even though the permit goes till 1, if he's going to be closed at operations done at midnight, he has to be done at midnight. I mean, right? I mean, that's,
Break out the roller skates at 12 o'clock.
It's got to be done with that event, but if you don't put a condition there that says that, that the setup is tied to that on event nights, then it's like having the after bar party right next to the bar, even though it's set up. I mean, I think without putting a condition in there, you're asking for a problem because someone at 12:01 is going to, walk to the other part and set one up. If that's the concern. And I think it would be pretty, it's like for Marty to go respond to something like that, I don't know what he'd do. It's like, well, we're done getting married, we're gonna roller skate now.
I would think as a property owner, I'd be concerned about liability issues to do that beyond midnight, but obviously that, we don't have control over that, so.
Yeah, and with the hours being until midnight, that was for all of our other wedding venues, and everybody's got to be gone. So if they roll up at 1 o'clock and you're still having a party, that's against the conditions of the permit for weddings and stuff.
But not for roller skating.
Roller skating.
The roller skating, he's only going to have it in the winter. I mean, I can't stop that, but the idea of this permit is that nobody can be there after midnight on these days during these months.
Well, I read his application different. Was not going to have wedding events during the winter,
Right.
only roller skating. That doesn't mean he's not going to roller skate in the summer.
Right.
They already roller
Conversation.
skate. Nothing about this is permitting him to have roller skating. They already have that.
Right.
That's already grandfathered in. That they can do that any day of the week, any time of the day. We don't have any control over it because it's grandfathered in. So all we're talking about is the wedding events are going to happen in the summer. That's when he's going to have them.
Right.
And I, like I said, I am totally in favor of this. I just have questions about connecting the two.
well, like you said, it's maybe a mute point, and, what
If we didn't delay it, do we have to get an extension if we go to the next meeting in this month?
most likely.
Likely?
When is the next meeting? Is it the
Seven.
18th or something?
17th, yeah?
18th.
We would be cutting it close. It could fit within the 60 days, though.
We
If
do?
we tabled it, yep.
Then I would really be in favor to table this, give staff time to look at it, Steve time to look at it. Let us get some more answers from the state on how we can do it. Because what we're saying, if we approve the consumption, is you can do it every day of the week, 8 in the morning till 1 at night.
Yeah, and my guess is on
That's
event,
his business, that's his choice.
Except that's not what he applied for, a conditional use. So that would be a change of use of the facility that's not listed in here. That's why I want to know whether we can tie them together. That's all I'm really concerned about. is
and I
can
would
we-
think on event nights, you could tie them together, that the consumption permit is done at midnight.
But
Same
wouldn't we have
this-
to put that,
I would think it would have to be a condition.
We could, yeah, it could be added as a condition, or we just change condition number 2 or something. I think that is very reasonable to say that the consumption permit ends at midnight for these events.
On event nights.
Does that have to go back through the P?
No.
Planning? No.
Jess has got his hand up.
Did the board want to include a condition for reviewing the access policy then as well for that particular property?
The access is the full length of the building
Yep.
because there's no curb or anything, and it's tarred right up to the building, so. Yeah, it's gonna be the question is, 1 o'clock at night or midnight and people backing out into a lane of traffic, that's a concern. Should be a concern for all of us. So with that change, and with the addition of reviewing the access, I would move approval of the conditional use.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now what was number 4, the new consumption and display permit?
I think we can table that and get some more clarity from the state.
Yep, Lucas said that was fine.
I would move to table that till the next meeting, get clarity from the state if there's any restrictions as to days of the week, and if we can tie it directly to the.
second?
Motion made and second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. For your information, staffing report, we have monthly finance reports, project status report, county board committee reports. Anyone? Susan?
We continue to work away on this LEC issue, and it's not exactly a smooth process. And kind of where we're at right now is the city is considering 3 possibilities, one continuing with us, one building a new police station, most likely kind of up by the hospital up in that area, and the third is building a police station and a public works building. And one of the things they really want from us is, well, how much are we going to charge them? What can they expect to pay going forward? And so we need to get this on the board agenda soon so we can have a discussion about that. And what it cost in 2022, and I think this included the 10% administrative, I don't know what we call it, but it was $237,000. But that doesn't include really anything for the actual use of the space. That just includes what it costs for the electricity, the gas, the insurance, all of those sorts of things. And we're looking some at what other places charge, and the very low-end number would be, no, they don't pay anything on top of that, which I don't think either Todd or I in agreement with. And then the high end is, well, what is the commercial rate for property? And then there's everything in between. And so one of the things we had the AMC do is give us some information about what other counties are charging cities. So we got that information. And probably the low end would end up being an overall cost of $15 a square foot, which is low. Probably the high end is $30 a square foot, which is more than other counties are charging, and probably a number somewhere in between. And then I think maintenance said, and Scott said, if we don't have them in there, there'd be a little bit of savings on cleaning supplies, that kind of thing, but not a whole lot of savings. So the county would have an extra, probably now because it's 2-3 years later than these 2022 numbers, a minimum of an extra $250,000 that we were putting out towards the LEC. Does that sound fairly accurate?
Yeah, I don't know how much I would want to throw that guess out, but there, it's a number, and it's more, it's certainly.
It's more than 200,000 for sure.
Probably, yeah, it's really tough to guess what the incremental cost of having, 100 people out of a building is.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it's a big number.
So it needs to come before the board so we can have a discussion and decide what we think is reasonable and fair and present that to them, and they can decide if they agree with that.
Is that something we would do a cow meeting?
Yeah. So I was going to actually give an update a little bit on this too. So as Susan said, we've met with them several times, once recently, and we've, let them know that we want to continue the work on the study, because the study's not complete yet either. We were kind of in a holding pattern while the city went and looked at the property down by Anandese and looked at the feasibility of putting a facility there, which you could put one there, but it would probably be cheaper to start from scratch, is what they found out. Just to put some numbers to what Susan's talking about, in the 2024 lease, it's $267,000, and that's $19.87 a square foot. In 2025, it's $312,358, which is $23.19 a square foot. In 2026, it's $363,138, which gets to $26.96. So one thing they've asked for is to get a number for that 2027. So if you look at the amount we're moving up towards, in the best number we could find 2 years ago or a year and a half ago was about $30 a square foot. So reasonably, for 2027, if you look at where we're moving, it would be somewhere near that number, and that would also be somewhat inflationary as well. So I don't think that would be unreasonable to have a number somewhere between there and moving towards $30 a square foot. One of the things in the study that we had asked for is to actually get comparison rates from Vaughan and find out what's reasonable out there, because one of the things we found out when we asked AMC, we got some numbers from them, but there wasn't one county that thought that the number that the city was paying was reasonable. Now, there are some examples of where a city is going to now be leasing to a county, and it'll be interesting what number, and that's within our district too, our AMC district, so it'll be interesting what number they come up with on that one.
So when you quoted $15 to $30.
Well, there were only two that I could find an actual number for.
I understand. Does that also include all the utilities?
Yes.
It's all over the board.
Well, you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing. You're paying somebody who pays their utilities to somebody who doesn't pay the utilities.
Well, I think
in
that case it was the same, that included everything. The most recent one I found was Redwood County to Redwood Falls, and that was $26.1 per square foot. That was for everything, and they did a new addition to their building in 2014. And that lease went until, I think, 2039. I think I'd have to look to be entirely accurate.
With no escalator in that
They didn't, which I think
That's
is
similar to what we did when
originally.
we built the building
Yeah,
over there. We didn't
yeah.
have an escalator in there.
Well, actually, the first lease, we just had a number that they paid up front. The second lease was a number with no escalator. I mean, we've had different variations, and I can
Right,
totally
right.
understand.
Right.
These are tough discussions, and it's tough to pinpoint,
Right.
you know, what's fair.
No,
Some of the
well,
other things that we
what's
have
reasonable?
communicated to them is, you know, we would like to set up a, you know, long-term reasonable agreement with you, and we do think the board is interested in, you know, for certainly extending the current lease for another year or two until everybody figures out what they want to do.
Yeah, and
And that the last thing we want to do is be kicking them out, so we've made that clear, because that was one of the rumors that was out there, is that the county wants to kick the city out, and that's not true.
Well, and I think in the first pay study, I think when Vaughn coming up, we were 15 to 20 years, we were going to be out of space. And I think that has been reconfigured a little bit now, so I'm curious to see where Vaughn's actually going to come up with, you know, I mean, there's other options, there's a lower level, there's a second level, there's a, you know, different ways to look at this and to, you know, to keep our department together and to keep their department together.
There is space on that block. You could change entrances. I mean, the message, one of the messages we've given the city is we do want to work collaboratively with you to find a solution.
yeah, and
If a solution's to be found.
I think they heard
may find
that.
out that it's better for them not to be there too.
yeah,
We don't know that.
I think they did hear that the last time, and I think they did believe we wanted to kick them out, you know. And I don't think that's what they believe anymore. And I think that they're interested in, they want to know what the fourth year would be, but if they're going to need a new building in 4 years, then they want to get going on it now. So they want to know if we can make some kind of agreement that we feel is reasonable, that they think is reasonable, that would go out 10 or 15 years. And not without, I think they believe that we have to have an accelerator in there. I don't think there's any issue about that. So that's kind of what the discussion is.
They have some big decisions to make.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question. Okay, I just want to clarify these numbers. So that first number you started out with, 267,000 something. So is that covering utilities and foreseeable capital expenses? Or just covers utilities?
That's covering what they're paying for a lease. Over the course of history, we've gone from having an agreement where you just paid X dollars, and then we had one where you were going to pay X number for a lease, and then you were going to pay a certain amount of utilities and a certain amount of capital. And I think both parties didn't think it worked out very well. So then we changed that, and then it was the third rendition of that was an all-in number. And that number was well below what we were actually, it was costing the county. So obviously, worked out great for the city, although they even have admitted that's not right.
No.
So now we, essentially, the last lease, we said, look, the best numbers we can find is about $30 a square foot. And so we want to work towards that number, and that's where you can see where we went, you go from 1987 a square foot, 2319, 2696. In one more year, we're getting very close to that $30 a square foot. And again, we've asked Vaughn to come up with numbers. We don't fully know that that's the right number. We're just, we're
I think
speculating a bit.
Scott and I have had a bit of a disagreement on the $30 number because I couldn't find another county that was charging that amount. And I think the city sees that as sort of arbitrary and pulled out of the hat. And then I think you and I independently looked at, well, what were they charging for commercial space in Red Wing? And there are very few places that are rented in Red Wing. So it's hard to pull a number out of that. So my concern was if we're going to do the $30 a square foot, we need to be able to show them what we're basing that on, and not just because there's two places out in Burnside that are charging that in their pretty new buildings. So it's not, if we can show that that's the going rate, I don't have any issue with that. But if we're, $4, $5, $6 above what anybody else is charging, then I think we're going to have a harder time convincing them that that's the right number.
But I think this is such a unique structure itself, too, with the, what's the classification on it?
Well, it's basically a secured facility is what it is. And that's where it's challenging when you go look for comps. Who rents secured facilities? I mean, there's some jails that are rented out in southwestern Minnesota. I don't know if those are still in business, but otherwise, most people don't rent that type of space.
So let me just,
Definitely unique.
Although, that's why I was trying to look at what other counties were charging, okay? Because, so that's Clay County, the city of Moorhead, 2025 to 2038 is $15 per square foot. Olmsted County, that was a crazy deal, because Olmsted County, they got $2 million from the city at the time they built it, and they charged them no rent. And they still don't charge them rent, but they charge other people who rent from them.
But the other odd thing is they pay for all the capital.
Well, they pay for capital, not all of it. I guess what it says is they do not pay rent, but they do pay for larger construction modifications in their space.
I think that's the way we started too, right? When we built that over
Yeah.
there. We did the same thing.
so what is the cost of utilities? Those,
There's a whole spreadsheet we can send you. It was
Okay.
somewhere over $200,000 is what it was in
So-
2022. Actually, Susan's
it.
got the spreadsheet there.
Yeah, I got right there. And the actual costs in 2022 were $237,855. That's what the actual costs were.
and then at $30 a square foot, you're how much?
That would be, that number right there is $15. Well, actually, that's not quite true, because the
No,
square
what's the
footage got
cost if we
changed.
rent it at $30 a square foot? I
Then
don't know
the
the square
cost would
feet.
be $452,835. But when I say that to you, Brad, they did some readjusting of the square footage, so the county ended up with a little more and the city a little less. So when I give you that number, it's based on the square footage, the original, because I don't have an updated worksheet. Yeah, so 450 to 835 was $30 a square foot.
What I'm trying to get at is to, what's the I mean, not, this costs us this is what you're actually paying for the space you're getting.
Right.
Renting. And it's going to be.
So basically, that number was about half utilities and about half square foot rent. And whether that's the right number or not, I don't know. I do know that when we contacted the counties, none of them are happy or thought it was fair. So if that's the case, I don't know how much I would base our square foot on.
Right, and it's to kind of wrap my head around cost to build square foot, which is probably $250 to $275.
It's way up there. I know the facility that the city toured in Rosemont, that's a joint LEC and Public Works facility, the cost of it was $60 million.
I think the site they were looking at for just their police station was like 16 million.
16 to 24, yep, and that was just police, yep.
But the cost per square foot, I mean, if you're only paying rent for, the rent of the square footage is only $12 or $13 or $14 a square foot, and you're going to build a new facility, it's going to be 30 or 40 years
Oh, I
to
agree.
pay. You'd have to rent for 40 years, and you still probably wouldn't pay as much, because you're not paying any interest on it. I mean, it's not cost-effective to me to go that route. I think we can work out a deal and get to a point where, and it's their decision.
Yes,
It's their decision.
it's their
But we should
decision.
not give them it for $4 a square foot to rent it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I think what we've been trying to get at is true costs, okay? I think we've been trying to get at that, at least so we understand it. And I think it's hard to get at the true cost number here because it's more complicated with this building. So you could look at what's it cost to build a new building. You could look at that. You could say, what did it cost to make this old building? And then I think also when you're negotiating a deal, you know there's a number that's too low that you'd never do it for that. We certainly aren't doing it for where we're losing money. And we know there's a number that's high enough that we'd absolutely do it for. And then what's that spot in between? And I think that we haven't really figured out either.
Committee of the whole, or whatever.
Yeah, so at some point, we need to come back with a committee of the whole, and I think, obviously, we need to continue on and finish the study, and that'll help us. But like I say, even if you pick something inflationary, I mean, we're getting towards the number we need to be, and it's fair. So, and that's what we need to be
That's what I think.
focused
If we
on.
pick something inflationary, we'll.
So we did, and I mean, part of the update today, we just wanted to make sure that you didn't think the three of us were falling off the truck. So.
Any other committee reports?
I have a couple of things. Well, maybe I was supposed to wait until new or old business.
Well, new or old business?
Thank you. So yesterday, there was the District 9 meeting, and there were a couple of things that came up. And one was the new cannabis laws that the early group can possibly get licensing starting July 1st, and therefore the need for a county to come up with, well, some decision as to what they were going to do, because it turns out that 12,500 number of people per license that you could apply for is a minimum, meaning somebody could come in and apply for a lot of licenses within the county, and they go by the county population as opposed to the city population. So that, I believe, is something that we are going to try and set up a committee of the whole for, and possibly have Matt Hilgard from AMC. We chatted a little bit this morning. There's not enough time, apparently, between now and July 1st to actually have, put together an ordinance, right? Or a moratorium, one or the other?
Well, yeah, and Sam can come up and talk to some of the timing, but in order to actually put a ordinance in place and go through the public hearing process, there's not enough time before July 1. The ordinance is not written. We do have some sample ordinances from some other counties, but a person should take more time and do it right when they do it. So yeah, my guess is that we'll have to come back with a moratorium on the 18th. Sam is trying to set up internal meeting with staff for next Thursday, so we can start working on moving in the right direction here. But Sam, I don't know if you have some more to add.
No, not really. Yeah, there's just not enough time to do an actual ordinance to figure out what direction we're going as a county. A lot of it also has to do with the cities and getting their perspective on, because per the AMC and what they've sent out, if the cities choose to delegate authority to the county, then that's a different thing than if they choose to keep authority themselves. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts that could never be stopped by July 1st.
And apparently, even after yesterday, they said that there was going to be a phone call late in the afternoon to find out the new updated rules coming down from the state. So when she says it's a moving target, it's a very quickly moving target. And yes, there wasn't enough information, but they definitely said counties should begin moving on it quite quickly.
So if we do a moratorium, we can change that moratorium, correct? I mean, but it's better we have to provide something for staff when people show up on July 1st.
Right. They want to be able to say the county board put a moratorium in, and we're currently working on an ordinance.
But we also are supposed to reach out to the cities and the townships, right?
Yep, that would be part of the process, because they can delegate authority, like Sam mentioned. And I think a number of them probably will.
The other thing that, I'm sorry, do you want to answer?
And we can enact a moratorium that will cover the cities, even if they say, no, we're going to take care of it.
If
We're not going to delegate to you.
they take care of it and don't want to delegate, they can, I think at that point, they can issue as many permits as they want, is what I understood from AMC yesterday. And I don't know what you've heard on that, correct?
We can't, what I took from yesterday's meeting is we cannot restrict below 4 permits. We can restrict above 4 permits. As a county,
Right, we can say Goodhue County only allows 4, but if a city chooses to keep its own licensing authority, they can
They
say.
can have 20.
We can, we'll have 20, and there's nothing the county can do about it because they kept authority.
Right, we can't say no because by state law, they will, if they go through the license process and are licensed by the state, then we cannot say no.
And then they have the responsibility for it, too.
Does a moratorium prevent the first 4 from going forward? Or,
Only if all the cities agreed to delegate to the county,
so it's not clear that it would?
I don't think.
Would they prevent?
Correct?
Yeah.
I think there could be a legal challenge there if not all the cities delegated or had the moratorium in place.
But 4 are allowed no matter what, by state statute or whatever?
Well, not in the moratorium area.
Not during the moratorium?
Not during the moratorium.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
But that's temporary, correct?
Yeah, until it's lifted.
Yeah, it can be up to a year, I think, but,
And it's not uncommon for government entities to do that. There's been a number of other topics where, cities or counties were not ready for them, and they put that in place for 6 months or a year.
And I would say we would be possibly in for a legal challenge doing it this late, other than the legislature just changed some things around it, and the rules are just coming out around it. Because we've known it's been coming for a long time. We didn't know what the ramifications to the county's decision-making process were until just recently.
Right, and as of yesterday afternoon, there was still going to be a phone call with the state, so I mean, it was still changing.
I have one more question. Do we know yet how it will be taxed? And will the county be reaping some of the benefit of that tax? Not a lot?
Yes, a little bit. It has to do with the counties getting a percentage, and I think it was 20%, but then that's divided up, so you get 10% of the 20%.
So you only get 2%? So 10% of 20% is,
Then it all depends upon how many,
July 1st is when early licenses will come out from the state. There's social equity applicants are the ones that can come in first. If you want to limit it, you must have an ordinance in place, which we don't have time to do. That's why we were talking about a moratorium. Tribal nations don't count to that number, and Prairie Island is putting up a store. They did want to, they did suggest that we talk to them about what their plans are. Just for information, we can't change it. There will be coming a toolkit on the state's website. The state's going to offer the licenses, not the counties. Now, in my notes, I wrote down, county can't have a moratorium on licenses, but I didn't go any further into that, so I'm not 100% sure what I meant by it, but I didn't write it down just on a whim, so somebody said something.
Well, in the very first thing that Julie Ring said is that you either need to get going on your ordinance or put a moratorium in. And I quote unquoted her on that one, so in our case, we have to get the moratorium going.
So the state agreed to a 10% cannabis tax automatically, and of that, 20% of it will go to local governments. How one figures that number out,
well,
that I do not know.
20% above the cost will be taxed. So if you charge 20
Well,
bucks.
10% is going to be the cannabis tax, so
I see,
you're going to buy
10%.
something, there's all these taxes on it, and a 10% cannabis tax. And of that 10% that the state collects, 20% of it will go to local government aid. Clear as mud. like I say, the Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, they're still dealing with an interim director, not their permanent one, so they're slow in what they're doing. And like everybody said, it's a moving target and it keeps changing.
And there was mention of putting a local tax on it too, if you wanted to.
Just Googling it, it says the tax on the cannabis product will be 10% in addition to state and local sales taxes. Yeah. Local governments will not collect an additional cannabis-specific.
Yes, very clearly, we need much more information coming down from the state to be able to say something.
So you're, on the agenda next month, we're going to be, our next meeting, we'll be looking at some kind of moratorium,
Yes.
most likely.
Yep.
We'll have,
Cow before the board meeting, so we can discuss.
Well, if staff thinks a cow is necessary, if we have enough information to have a cow, then we would, but we wouldn't just have a cow to have a cow, so, but I'm pretty sure a moratorium is going to be in front of you.
Basically, everybody's just got to go to Prairie Island to get your weed.
At the moment, yes.
Or another county that's set up, yes.
But we still have to check with cities, right?
Like Lake City, you know.
Yeah, one of the things that group will have to do is find out what the cities are
What the
wanting
cities
to
are
do.
going to do.
Tax on alcohol, that amounts to a lot of money. I mean, it's probably 10%.
Right, any other new or old business?
Sorry, one more.
Yep.
Well, yesterday I had a chance to talk to the gentleman from the Minnesota Counties Intergovernmental Trust who handles the insurance, and I was curious about cybersecurity because nobody really brought that up yesterday as an issue. So I was asking him, is that really not as big an issue as at least I keep hearing it is? Anyway, he said they didn't have time to put him on the agenda, but he had a whole bunch of stuff. He said the people that do the cyber attacks on government, that they are getting much more sophisticated. And he said they're getting to the point now where they're actually contacting government staff and making an actual relationship with them. So basically, it's like grooming in the world of child sex abuse. So they're grooming staff to be able to trust them. And then at some point, they say, hey, by the way, we changed our banking information. It goes, I want you to send it here instead of there. So he said that's one of the things that they're seeing. I asked him about the ransom monies in case one, does end up getting attacked and you can't get into your files. He said it usually closes down city government for about a week. You can't do anything. They do get in there and they negotiate and they do pay it, whatever the ransom is. He gave one example of a $400 ransom demand. They were able to bring it down to $60,000, and they did pay it.
400,000?
$400,000
To 60,000.
to $60,000, right? And he said that they used to that they have kind of a cap of paying $500,000 in claims. He said it's adequate now, but he said the claims keep going up, and before long, it's not going to be adequate. And so he did make the final comment about wasn't sure how long they could stay in business doing something like that. So on that cheery note, it was just the idea that I am going to chat with them some more, but I think cybersecurity is obviously a something that is coming. Yeah, cheery note.
I guess I had a question for our Jess. When are we, or what's the process for getting this landfill closed? I know people are wondering, it was such an urgency to get it. Are we in that process? Where are we at?
Yep, we're in the process of getting the plans finalized. I believe the plans are actually done. It's just permitting with MPCA and others. Once we have the permitting in process and a final set of plans, we'll go out for bid, and we'll hire a contractor to come in, close everything up. We'll meet the intent of what the MPCA needs for permitting, finalize everything with them, and be closed up, hopefully yet this year.
We were told it should be done by the summertime because the MPCA's rules change. We don't want to
Right, and the MPCA is also acknowledging that people are working towards that, and they're aware that Goodhue County has started a process, so.
Once you're in the process, the new rules would not apply.
That's what we've been told.
Anything else? How about review and approve the county claims?
Move approval.
Motion, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.